artifact set.
Yeah, you might run the new one.
I do not have a set for Toma and Raiden right now.
Yeah.
So if I just start running for Paradise Lost, I'm not going to lose anything by grinding there instead.
Yeah. Well, other than the dead weight. But anyhow.
The dead weight he gets turned into child artifacts because I don't have artifacts on my child yet.
True. That's right. You can always do the conversion. Anyhow, I think we're live.
And they're really, really good artifacts from dead weight. I will
put them on Heizo or whatever. It's still got an Animo bonus, so like it's not.
I'll keep them around in case a future character wants them, or if I get Wanderer in the future.
So let's talk about this set. So I'm going to read this off, and then we'll talk about what I did to try to measure it mathematically. Oh, really? Okay, so what I did. Well, first we'll read off of the new set. So this is based on the live stream. We're going to compare Flowers of Paradox Lost, which is the EM set that's announced in the live stream. It'll be the new EM set, which is the quote-unquote Bloom set, to Gilded Dreams. So they both give the same two-piece, so that's the same. So Gilded Dreams, other than timing, essentially is either 14% attack for each matching member and 50 mastery for each unmasking member by element. Usually that's going to be 2. Sometimes that's 3. Kind of depends on how you run your team. And this is speaking specifically about Burgeon and Hyper Bloom. These are the 2 teams. So right now, me and my kid, we run an EM Raiden. Basically focused on Hyper Bloom damage with some aggravate damage on the side. So that team comp's going to be... here, I'll show it to you. So that team comp, at least the way I run it, everyone's got their own way of doing EM Raiden. But the EM Raiden team is going to be, so that's going to be a Dendro, like Nahida. I'm actually I'm currently running double Electro, but that's not actually optimal. Optimal would be to put Kazuha there. So you're going to have...
So the one I run is Nahida, Jingshu, Barbara
instead of Kokomi, yeah.
And
then
Raiden.
And so I'm going to go with the kind of my kind of high level damage. I was running Miko because Miko's new. But so let's say this is your kind of optimal 3. So Raiden is going to run the Gilded Dreams. Gilded Dreams is going to have 3 party members, so it's 150 EM bonus every time she creates a reaction, even off field. Just use your E skill. In that team, actually, let's go back. Let me switch that team, and I'll show you how I do the artifacts for that. So when you're running something like a Hyper Bloom team, the bonus that you get... Oh, gosh. You're going to want somebody to run the Deepwood Memories set. I run it on my Kokomi.
And I run it on my Nahida.
Right. So, but I run my Nahida on the EM set. So I run Gilded on Nahida.
And Raiden.
Verdiscent, of course, on Kazuha. And then Raiden's also running the a Gilded Dream. So both Nahida and Raiden will be giving each other the 150 EM buff because they're both doing off-field reactions with either Quicken reactions or Blooms or Hyper Blooms. So they're both buffing each other, essentially, and Kokomi's purpose is to heal, obviously. Lots of hit points, lots of healing bonus. But her purpose is also to just keep that effect of the Deepwood Memories up, which is going to be, every time she does her E skill, you get 30%. You get a 8-second decrease in Dendro resistance, which applies to Hyper Bloom damage. So that's why the synergy works. So the question is, do we farm this new set? So Flower of Paradise Lost, 80 EM same, but then the equipping characters Bloom, Hyper Bloom, Burgeon reaction damages are increased by 40%. So it's a flat damage bonus multiplier. So it's going to be independent of EM. And then they gain another quarter of the 40%, so that's another 10%, each time they trigger a Bloom reaction. So it starts off, first Bloom reaction, 40%, 50, 60, 70, 80, And then those stacks stay independent. So if you're continuously doing lots of bloom reactions, you're going to have that slow warm up, and then you're going to have an 80% damage bonus. Now, on paper, that sounds tremendous. Like that's a huge bonus, especially for bloom, not as much for Roman and hyper bloom. And this is why. So what I ended up doing was I went ahead and I looked at how the EM scaling works. I'll look at the other graph here first. So if you just look at how EM scaling works, raw, basically you get these curves. This is a percent damage bonus for EM. I started at 80 because 80 is what you get from the 2 set, right? So at just the 80 from the 2 set, you're gonna get almost a double damage in transformic reaction. Yeah, that's your base.
Oh yeah, and it's a transformative reaction.
Bloom. And so yeah, bloom, hyper bloom, they're all transformative. So electrocharge, all those are transformed. Swirl, those are all transformed. So they all follow this line here. In addition, quicken reactions, they have a slightly lower line. So your first 80 EM is going to give you about 50% damage bonus. Your first 8 EM is going to give you 30% in 32% ish in the or actually it's 24% in the vaporize and melt. But as you see, these lines are not perfectly straight. They have kind of a slow taper off, and so that's kind of how EM works in diminishing returns. Some people like to say that EM is optimal in the 250 range. Well, that's because that line is pretty much as steep as it's going to get in the 250 range, and it starts getting less steep there. So there's your bang for the buck. But when we're talking about the damage bonus comparison, what really matters is how much more damage do you get for every 50 EM, 100 EM, or 150 EM that you get from the set. So we're basically saying, a mono team, basically, a mono bloom team versus a 2 electro hyper bloom team, or 2 pyro virgin team, or a balanced team like I showed earlier. So what I did was I took these values for EM and I calculated how much more damage you would get. Basically, the first derivative of this curve based on what point you start at. So for instance, with the one character, from 80 to 130, the transformative reactions are doing 25% more damage. The vaporize and melt are actually doing 24% damage. And quicken is actually doing close to 23, a little over 23% damage. And then that amount of damage bonus you get for every 50 EM you go up the curve goes down. So that if you had a team with 1,000 EM, or almost 1,000 EM, you're only getting a 2.7% damage increase for vaporize. You're getting 3.2% damage increase, and you're getting 2.5. So if you had farmed this set and you have all EM pieces, so the EM timepiece, EM goblet, EM circlet, an EM weapon, and good substats, it is reasonable to expect a base EM that's somewhere around 750. So with 750 EM, you're going to go the two piece is only going to give me about 10% more damage versus the Hyperbloom set, which would give me between 40 and 80% more damage. So those are intermittent multipliers.
Pure Elemental Mastery build, the Hyperbloom set is better.
Yes, absolutely. If you've got a hyper invested EM build, now granted, pulling EM sands, circlets, and goblet is going to take you a whole patch or longer unless you get super gotcha gods luck. Just because EM is the lowest possibility for primary stats on all of these pieces, especially circlets. So you can get them, maybe you can offset your circlet, but it's still going to be a lot of resin. We're talking a ton of resin, and half that resin is going to be generating artifacts for the Wanderer.
In terms of practicality, like actual character examples, if you're building a hybrid Toma who's going to be using Elemental Mastery, Recharge, and hit points,
right?
Gilded may end up winning simply because he's going to end up with a lower base.
Yes. So like my Toma right now, let's look at how I've got my Toma built.
But if you're running a Hyper Bloom character,
yeah, if you're running like an EM Hyper Bloom, like Kuki Shinobu or Raiden, suddenly that's going to be more on the line. So like my Toma here, I've got a mess on my Toma. All right, my Toma's a mess right now, never mind. But Toma is one of those characters you want to have your energy recharge in the 180s to the 200s. If you're running Favonius, you're going to want crit rate. I'm not. I'm running the Moon Piercer, so it's a little bit less necessary for crit. And you're going to want to give him a significant amount of hit points. You can see mine doesn't have good artifacts right now, but my artifacts are garbage. But you're going to want to be at least 2,000 so that his shield doesn't just completely melt to every attack.
To his own Burgeons.
To his own Burgeons, right? The Burgeons will do it.
Essentially got to balance it so he can protect against his own Burgeons each time.
Whereas someone like Kuki Shinobu, which I am running a gilded
so
set
heals
on
her Elemental Mastery.
Yeah, so she heals on EM. So EM is a really good stat for her.
Anyway.
Yeah, you're already going to
hyper
hyper invest.
EM sit?
Yeah, so I've got my EM right now is base 760, and I've got gilded. So if I were to run her as the trigger,
she's in that 700 range.
Exactly. So even if she was the solo Electro unit on the team,
the Hyper Bloom set would do more for her.
The Hyper Bloom too, so it would do dramatically more for her. And I mean, for her recharge, like I guess I got lucky with some recharge stats, but realistically,
you can just run a recharge weapon if it gets bad.
Yeah, it just. I mean, you don't run an Iron Sting on her. You run or the new. They've announced the stats for the new Umbrella weapon. It's the same as the Iron Sting, except for it has a different conditional damage bonus.
Interesting.
So, same idea.
Oh, and the sword. There's the sword that was in a couple banners back.
Then you got the Gotcha sword too.
It increases your Elemental Mastery the same amount that Iron Sting does. It increases your recharge by a percentage of your mastery. Right. So if you have that weapon,
then you don't even need to think about ER substats. So Kuki's burst is good, don't get me wrong, but you're not running her for her burst. You're running her to trigger Hyper Blooms in this party configuration.
And so the same things being said for Kuki apply to characters like Raiden.
Right. So like if I didn't want to run Raiden in the EM set, I would just put Kuki Shinobu in this team. Same functional in terms of the Hyper Bloom damage. This is going to still give huge amounts of Hyper Bloom damage. It's just not going to give you the bursty damage that you can get from a Raiden Shogun. And a lot more people have Kuki Shinobu than Raiden, since she's kind of in the standard banner. So that being said, support people like Toma are not going to have hyper invested EM. So you're probably going to want to still run Gilded Dreams, because especially since he'll probably be the only pyro unit on the field. Let's say you shoot for like 300 EM base for him. So now we're looking at a 36.6%, so almost a 40% base, but also his burning damage is going to go up. So if you accidentally trigger a burning because your hydro isn't high enough, that damage is going to get boosted by the Gilded Dream set by the same 36% because they're both transformative reactions. So you're going to get, so let's say half your damage is burning. If you go with the Gilded Dream set, you're going to get a flat 36% damage bonus for all of his reactions, which is almost all of his stuff. So half burning damage, half burgeon damage. Where if you were to go with the other set, half your damage is getting no bonus at all. So it's basically a 20% damage cut total for Toma's reaction damage to the team. So at a 300 EM level, you are not going to get what you want out of Toma unless you hyperinvest EM, but he doesn't have the shield strength based on EM like Kuki heals on EM. He's going to want recharge because he's got a pretty expensive burst unless you have constellations on him that make that a little bit better.
And so the benefit of grinding, even though you might get more out of the Burgeon set altogether, the benefit of grinding it for him is much less than the benefit of grinding it for a Hyper Bloom.
Whereas, again...
So for Burgeon characters, because...
There's only one, really.
There's only one Burgeon character now.
Yeah. Toma kind of has cornered the market in Burgeon reactions, right? He's going to be the one that wants to stick with Gilded. Whereas, if you do want to run a Hyper Bloom Raiden, and you want to grind to the point you get EM pieces on all 3 of your 5 sets. You want to get EM substats,
Should
maybe.
be what 137 mastery each.
Yeah. So you get to about, even without substats, I think, and an EM weapon. If you give her the Moon Purser, you're going to be sitting at. Oh, I can look at it right now. Let's see. So if you were to do just the EM stuff, so right now,
I'm going to open up a calculator really quickly.
Yeah.
So how much elemental mastery does an elemental mastery piece give? Okay,
so it's 187 for each piece.
So 187 for each piece times 3. And how much is the Moon Piercer?
Moon Piercer is sitting on my tongue. Just a second. Okay, so the Moon Piercer is 110, and plus you get the 80 from the 2 set.
Plus 80. So this means you have 751 mastery.
Right, with no substats.
Literally anything else. Just 3 artifacts that have elemental mastery as their main stat. The Moon Piercer and the set that you're running.
So that's the 7. Would you say 700 and what?
751.
751. So that sits you at 8. Well, wait, 900. It sits you at 900 after the Gilded Dreams, which sticks you right around in here.
If I add 150, it's 901.
So it gets you right in here between 12% more damage and 11. So
and
12 flat.
And when you're looking at that range, it's clear.
It's clear that the new set is going to be superior for burgeon damage, even if you consider that you're doing journeying damage, because you're talking 40 to 80% more damage. And again, if you keep those blooms going, because the stacks are independent and they're 10 seconds, presumably on an Abyss floor, once you get 4 bloom reactions happening,
in this case,
it's just going to keep
the
going.
40% damage bonus that's by default is already winning.
Yeah, it's already winning. Like, it's already won, right? So that's kind of the mathematics behind
So if you're running
all this.
you're running a hybrid attack elemental mastery for your Raiden, you want her to be doing powerful aggravates.
Yeah, then it gets different, right?
Then it goes different, and you're back to wanting to run Gilded.
Because if you're running a crit circlet or maybe a crit and a damage because of aggravate, and you're only sitting at like 200 some here, if you're sitting at 180 and you get that full team bonus, you've got almost 45% damage, but you also have 40% more quicken related damage that you would completely lose if you ran the other set. Oh, you got your Yai? Oh, congratulations. You got our Yai C1. So that's the TLDR. I've seen a lot of videos about this coming out these last couple days because they did a live it, and it's like it would be best to consider the mathematics and to really do the math. Everything said, this is a lot of time and resin investment. This is going to be, expect to spend a whole patch building maybe one of the 2 EM characters. So if you don't have a Haizo, or you don't have or want a Wanderer, it's going to be a little bit of a slog to build it. Now, granted, the other set would be really good on Haizo. Like the other set, I don't have the graphic up for it, but it's going to be normal attack speed. Charge attacks trigger a bunch of buffs. You can do a charge attack with Haizo, of course, to open up your rotation, and then you're going to get all those buffs, and he can stay on field. He's going to lose Verdus and Venerer's resistance cut, unfortunately, but if you wanted to run like a primary Anemo damage Haizo, that's also an option. And then, granted, the other set's perfect for Wanderer, of course, because it's tailor-made. So that's the discussion of these sets. If anybody is on and they have questions about the math, I will re-upload this to YouTube, like I usually do, and I will also put a read-only link to the spreadsheet in there. So if anyone wants to look at the math and look at how the equations work for EM, that's also an option. So I'm gonna call this and get to editing this for YouTube, and then I'll be back on in an hour and a half or so to stream just the daily content and stuff. Thank you all for watching.